Realtor work, what really goes into a transaction to get to a finish line. Stay tuned to this episode of The Den to hear more. The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, where we talk real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. We're a small team of partners sharing what we've learned along the way. Backed by over $500 million in real estate sales and over 2,300 successful transactions. You'll hear from proven experts and industry leaders with a fresh take on what's happening in real estate and beyond. Welcome to The Den. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to talk about all that is involved to close a transaction in real estate. There's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people kind of think that we go out there and we put a sign in the yard, we shake some hands, and then we go to a closing table. And that's really not how it plays out. Tremendous amount of work that goes into it before we get to that point. Before I get into that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my right, Paul, hand me the Rockberry, Aspen, the Ninja Groen, and the boss, Shannon Martin Martinez. My name is Ben, Hard Hat Lyons.
Never in your life.
That's right.
Never in your life.
You should call me Soft Hands Lyons. No, I got a callus there. I got a little callus.
We don't want to hear about that.
Yeah. I put in the work. I bring a shovel to work every once in a while. But today we are going to talk about the process that we go through as realtors, the realtor work that we put into to get to a transaction. I think it's helpful for you as the audience to understand what goes into a transaction. I mean, I love those shows where, you go out, we meet with clients, we go to 3 beachfront homes, then we sit down at a setting, usually on a lake, and we talk about what's the pros and cons of each house. And then we end up, helping the customer close on their beachfront bargain. Have you seen that show?
And do you know that they've normally already bought the house?
When they go back and do all that? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Whenever they show them 3 houses, they've already bought one, typically.
Yeah. It's so awesome.
But I like how the one's unemployed, the other one's the librarian, and they're buying a $3 million house.
A butterfly
I've never had those customers. I like
and a
them.
budget of, $2.5 million for repairs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, reality portrayed on TV is not the reality of a real estate agent. But I think it's enlightening for our audience, again, to understand what all goes into the actual process of closing a transaction from start to finish. All the different things that we do as realtors, because there is a perception. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but there is a perception that all we do is put a sign out in the yard and we collect offers and then we go to closing. And I can understand that from a consumer's perspective. They don't see and they're not up to speed on all the things going on in the back end, but want to shed some light on that today. So, Aspen, I'm coming to you first.
Oh no.
Big surprise.
That is.
Supposed to be looking away.
I know. Normally I don't make eye contact.
There's a whole people component to a real estate transaction. Why don't you talk to the audience or talk to us about what you see or who you have to deal with throughout the transaction just to get to the finish line?
So whenever you are starting a real estate transaction, typically you'll have your realtor, and that's kind of the middle person. That's your person that goes to all of these different people. So you might have a lender, maybe multiple lenders. Maybe you have your title agents, your escrow officers. You will have appraisers and inspectors and your uncle's best friend who did construction for 3 years who wants to inspect the property. There's and when just on inspectors alone, I mean, you could have septic inspectors or termite or roof or general, or there's just so that you'll have surveyors. Sometimes there's lawyers involved. There's a plethora of people involved in making sure the transaction goes from point A to point B.
Yep. And so even at the title company, right, we have our closing agent, we have the escrow officer, we have research. We have all kinds of people that we deal with on all the fronts. And so you just kind of alluded to that we're kind of the center person for that. Would you consider the realtor the hub of the information that's coming in?
I would. I think the realtor is the person who is going from point A to point B. And of course, the lender and title are communicating, but we're kind of the middle one to also facilitate and make sure, oh no, we're actually going to close this day instead, or whatever it might be, making sure they have their 3 days to review the closing document. So the realtor really is the center person and kind of the wealth of knowledge for the buyer or seller. They're really working exclusively for the buyer and seller, kind of as a liaison, I would say, like a wedding coordinator. You're just there mingling in the whole time. You're involved in every single part of the transaction versus, title will be involved in title. Lending is involved in lending. Inspectors do their inspections. So it's kind of like the one job that's really has their fingers in everything.
How much would you say the coordination component comes into play? Like you're hearing that, okay, so you're working with a seller, the buyer's agent saying, hey, we got a contractor that wants to take a look at the roof. How much of that coordinating do you do on a daily basis?
Almost all of it. I coordinate pretty much everything because also I know the people I'm calling. They might be able to get, one time I had someone they called on because they wanted to get some ductwork looked at for an inspection and they were a month out. I called them, the same person, got him in next week. They really do, like if you have the connections with people, it's almost easier for us to just facilitate it because then we also have to request the appointment. So we're the ones that typically are requesting the appointment to actually go into the house. So instead of having, the buyer talk to the inspector, then talk to us, and it's kind of a game of telephone, sometimes it's easiest for us to just add our buyer or seller's, approval to just order it for them and get it scheduled.
Yeah. And that's kind of a slippery slope, right? Because we don't want to take over the wheel from the buyer and be like, hey, we're just going to drive the car here. Because we want the buyer to be able to say, yes, I want this inspector or that inspector. It'd be a lot easier if we just said, hey, here's the ones we trust and know. And, it's the easiest, but it may not be the wishes of the buyer or the seller. The seller has inspections as well, septic inspections and things like that. So the coordination is pretty key. It takes a lot of time, doesn't it? I mean, we see a lot of back and forth just to get to a specific inspection time.
And we also know what the deadlines are because you can't just be doing inspections as long as you want. You can negotiate more time, but we're really the ones we're the facilitator. We really are making sure everything is met. We have the people talking to who they need to talk to, all the T's crossed and I's dotted. That's kind of our job. Yeah. And I don't want to say disagree with, I've never had someone ever question if I worked enough on the contract. But also those aren't the people I want necessarily as clients, I guess. But I could see like kind of the outside person thinking that, or like people having opinions about that. And you could make an argument with that for anything. But we work our butts off and it really should be seamless. I also don't really fall into the mantra people say, well, you need to show them all the back end work that you're doing. You need to prove your worth. I'm not going to do that either. Yeah. Because then it's just another step of me having to do all these things to you. I'm just going to make sure it's seamless. We're going to get stuff done in time. And if there's a hiccup, I'm going to have a solution. That's kind of how I operate it.
Yeah. And I like the way you said that. I think for a lot of people, if they feel like the job was really easy, then you've done your job, right? If the transaction was smooth and seamless, then you've done your job. They may not see or know or be aware of everything that's going on. It's like the duck, right? It's calm on top and just below the surface is just paddling away. It's the same thing with us. We try to present ourselves in a very professional manner. We show up when we need to, we coordinate what we need to, and we close a lot of transactions. But at the same time, a lot of people don't necessarily understand what we're doing on the back end. There's a lot of conversation, Shannon, going back and forth that we have on transactions all the time. Just to piggyback off of the inspection component, septic inspections, termite inspections, all the time we're dealing with schedules and conflicts and, maybe aggressive dogs or any number of things that you throw in the mix. And it just seamlessly happens from a client experience, which is a big win for us. But this is our opportunity to kind of lift the veil and explain what goes on in the back end there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's a lot more than I think. Again, if the customer doesn't see it, we've done our job. They don't need to know how hard that was.
We can cry in each other's arms, right?
Right.
It was just a big group hug. And we've done that a couple times. Paul doesn't hug back half the time. I got to hug him.
Not a hugger.
He's not a hugger. Let's jump to you, Paul. Talk to the audience about some of the things as a realtor you need to be up on when it comes to contracts and regulations and things like that. Go down that road a little bit to explain the work that is put in that regard.
My mind just went, that's a big question.
It's a big question. Yeah.
Well, I think getting back to what Aspen says, I think the reason that we're in the middle of everything is because we set up the ground rules. Our contracts set up how this process is going to go, time frames. And a lot of it is based on legal precedent throughout the country. A lot of the things that we work on is like on forms at the state level. We're the ones that provide the forms, is where the legal landscape, what it looks like. If we're, independent consideration came in because there's a few lawsuits that said, well, we need it now, So a lot of times that we are looking at the protections for buyers, protections for sellers, protections for us even in these contracts, so that when we set these ground rules up, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody's playing the same game. We all understand the end game, so that when the lender gets the contract, they know exactly where to look. They know what theirs are. When title company gets the contract, they can start their process and they know what their deadlines are. And then we guide everybody through this whole process. I think the thing that buyers and sellers don't see, because they're just looking at buying a home, is not only legal, but legislatively, we're trying to, something came out just today that HUD and USDA took some of the restrictions on new builds for upgraded electrical work that should save a homeowner doing a new build about $20,000. I mean, there's a lot behind the scenes in this industry that goes on that's not just all the fun stuff you see on the TV shows.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Aspen Groen. I'm a partner at the Lyons Group. We're dedicated to making your real estate experience the best it can be. If you're looking to buy or sell, go to sjcbroker.com and watch our informational video series. These videos break down the process and shed some light on buying or selling. While you're there, schedule a private consultation with one of our partners. We'd love to sit down, talk strategy, and give you a real advantage in today's market. You deserve the best, so take those steps, and we'll see you soon. Now back to the show.
Just to give our audience perspective, how many changes do we have in our purchase agreements typically and the forms that we use? Let's just lump them all into one. How many changes do we have on an annual basis on the forms that we use?
Well, that's a hard question. Sometimes very little. This year, quite a bit.
Yeah.
We just put out.
In what state?
Yeah, in what state? So in New Mexico, we just put out 28 new or revised forms because you change one, anything that's related to that form gets changed as well.
28 forms.
Yeah.
That have been revised this year alone.
Well, and mainly, in my opinion, for the better.
Yeah.
I don't think we went backwards on anything, but I do think the worst thing you could do as a realtor is show up and go, oh, I haven't seen that before. Let me read it real quick in front of the buyer or in front of the customer. And then they're going to go, well, you don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think staying up on changes, being ahead of the game, staying up on what's coming out, what's in the news, what's, all that kind of stuff is extremely important.
What's the hot spots, right?
We just had that FinCEN rule that was only in place for a month too. So it came down from federal government. We had to implement FinCEN, and then it got taken away. So sometimes there's...
Oh, I didn't even know it was taken away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
news.
When did that happen?
Yeah.
About a month ago.
About a month ago, yeah.
And then they put a
backed
pause
it
on
off.
it.
Yeah, they
So
backed
they're
it up.
paused it
Yep.
right now.
It's paused right now.
Yeah.
It's still
As
in our
of
contracts,
May
but
4th.
I was going to say, because it's in the contract. I didn't realize it wasn't relevant.
yep, I had a deal that went under contract, and it was kind of a longer one. Went under contract. It was being bought and sold in a trust account. FinCEN came out. They didn't want to give all that information, so they switched it to their personal accounts. And then by the time we actually closed, FinCEN was gone, so they put it back in the trust. So it was kind of a funny one.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want to explain to our audience what FinCEN is and kind of how that came about?
I don't know if we need to because it's gone now.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it was just a disclosure to help essentially money laundering and reduce fraud in real estate. So if it was being a cash purchase, I believe any residential, commercial, anything, cash purchase that's in an entity.
In an entity.
Was the biggest thing. So an LLC, a trust, S Corp, whatever was being purchased in, had to be disclosed.
One of the reasons behind that is because when you go through a lender, they have a bunch of things. And there's a bunch of laws lenders have to follow that are red flags. So they have to double check certain things. So cash purchases, things in entities that aren't using lenders, FinCEN is the way to check for red flags there. And title companies doing those.
And you know what, though? They did that with businesses, too. All our LLCs had to be put into it. What was it, last year?
Mm-hmm.
I went through, got it all done. Well, I didn't. My bookkeeper got it all done. And then They said, never mind. You don't need to do that. I was like,
My procrastination paid off last year.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it speaks to this conversation right now speaks to how quickly the landscape changes. I mean, we're dealing with FinCEN just, 2 months ago and got everything geared up in that direction. And now it's been backed off. So we're not having or required to do that. And we're disclosing potential costs to the buyers and sellers if they're buying in a trust or selling in an LLC. There's costs associated with that. So, that just speaks to having to stay up on these contracts, the regulations and the overlays that we need to be cognizant of as realtors. There's a lot of learning that happens constantly in this industry. What about like different layers, Paul, like state, local, federal? We have a state level regulation on HOAs that is for disclosure purposes, which is probably different than Arizona or Texas or Colorado. Do you see like local, state, and federal overlays that we need to be aware of?
I don't know where you're going with this, but I will say everything we do is the Fair Housing Act kind of overarches everything, and we have to fall under that. And if you're playing within those parameters, then the state can get stricter. They can't loosen up. It's kind of like any law. You can't just say it's not, well, except for marijuana, of course. That seems to be
the only kind of
the only thing that you can do is federal, it's illegal, but in the state we can do it. But usually, if we have some restrictions on, when it comes to housing, can't discriminate against the long list of protected classes. We get stricter as we go down to the local level.
Yeah. And for example, like if you transfer a property in an HOA in another state, I don't know what the rules are there. But in New Mexico, if you transfer a property or sell a property that's in an HOA, you have to follow certain rules for disclosure. You have to get all the covenants and the bylaws to the buyer. You have to have an HOA certificate filled out, which says that they're not back on their dues. There's no liens coming against them. No one has a first right of the first right to purchase that property. So there are steps, and those are overlays to what we do in business normally. And then here locally, we have things that involve like transfer fees for irrigation or domestic water and things like that. So there's a lot to it, is kind of where I was going with that. And then you take it to the national level where you're talking about that big umbrella, and you got to operate under that entire umbrella.
Well, and you could probably speak more to that, being licensed in 2 states. Colorado is loose.
It's not, but it's just like we do not have form changes. We had one change whenever there was a change to the compensation that got put in the contract. And I think that is the only change I've ever seen in that contract since I've been licensed.
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
Colorado doesn't change forms like New Mexico does. And we also don't have many either. Like HOA, you have to disclose that there's an HOA and the covenants and, just disclose anything about the property. That's it. You don't have to have a form filled out. The only forms that we have really, of course, lead-based paint, because that's federal. So that's like over everything. And then source of water, seller's property disclosure. And that's about it.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward in Colorado.
It's very straightforward in Colorado.
New Mexico I would say, I don't know if convoluted is the right term.
It right. is a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Well, licensing is a big thing in New Mexico, because Colorado, you don't need to be a licensed contractor. You don't need to be a licensed home inspector. There are a few things, but it's a lot looser up there.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Normally, I feel like you'd think it'd be the opposite.
It'd be flipped. Yeah. Then it's just not the case. Well, let's pivot a little bit. Shannon, coming to you, I think it's important to shed some light on the flow of information and how we handle the flow of information and why we handle the flow of information. So can you speak to our audience a little bit about what happens behind the scenes with the contracts and adherence to the timeframes and how we store and how we upload and how we get it to the title and all that stuff? That's a loaded question. But
yeah, so that's all stuff that's not glamorous or fun that nobody sees us doing, except every now and again we will get the call, someone says, wow, you were working late last night. Yeah, I was doing all this stuff that's not fun in the middle of the night. Yeah, I think people, what they don't show, they show how simple it is on those shows. What they don't show is how much background work we do. And I can't even name it all, but just, in a general a transaction, you think, we're doing work up front. We're, pulling septic permits, seeing if the house was moved before we ever even list it, pulling, records from the county. We're doing research, not just for our market analysis, but we're looking at, what kind of water it has, if it's got irrigation water and maybe how much they have. And, we're looking at all kinds of stuff like that. And once we go in there, even when you're writing an offer, and you don't have the listing, sometimes you're looking at those things before you make the offer. During that time, you just think about how much you have to make sure, your title company gets your entire contract. They get any addendums, any changes, anything like that along the way. You make sure that your office, just to stay in compliance, that they are getting your purchase agreement. They're getting all the addendums that go with it. They're getting all the disclosures that need to be made to keep us, on track and out of trouble. We're doing a tremendous amount of work just to keep our file just on our end, just to make sure that we're following, compliance and that we're staying within all of our deadlines. We're making sure the lender has got, everything that they need. Lenders are going to send us forms and say, we need to get this, FHA and VA, they have these, amendatory clauses and things like that have to be done along the way. And they're sending out those, and we need to make sure they get signed and backed. And we need to make sure that they have, tax estimates. They need to make sure that they have, any addendums that were in there. Sometimes it's really easy just to sign a quick addendum and say, well, we just agreed to do, a $200 credit for, this electrical switch over here or something. If the lender doesn't see that until we're at closing, they're going back to underwriting.
Yeah.
It's got to be done, and they've got to know that in a timely manner. Title company is going to need to know that information too. So everything from big things to little things, you're making sure that everybody is staying in the loop. You're making sure that when the appraiser is calling and saying, hey, this light doesn't work in this room. Okay, so let's get somebody over there and let's have it looked at and let's get it fixed. And then we need to get back to the lender to say, go ahead and reorder the recheck on that appraisal. And then we're letting the appraiser know, here's the paperwork for it, and go ahead and have a look at it. And we're rescheduling that. So all of those things that are constantly going on and we're constantly working on, they're not glamorous, and nobody sees that work. And it is a lot of background work. There's a lot of paperwork being shuffled digitally mostly these days. We're not actually shuffling paperwork. I can remember those days when we carried files this big for one property. Now it's all digital, but we're making sure everything got signed properly. Initials got in all the right places. Lenders got everything they need. Titles got everything they need. Appraisers have everything they need.
Yep.
Surveyors have everything they need.
And so when no longer do I have to call Shannon on a Sunday night and be like, what are you doing? Heading back to the office to fax something. Remember the faxing?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the fax. You never experienced that, Aspen.
I did fax.
Did you fax?
Only for Lana.
Oh my gosh.
When I started at Coldwell to open a new order with title, we faxed it over. And then the title company was like, I was in there for a closing. They're like, you can email us. I said, what are we doing here, people?
Yeah. Where are we
I think they're emailing now, but
anything.
I had to fill out the front fax form, and I was like,
cover page.
I know, I was like, what are we doing?
You had a cover page.
We had to do cover pages over.
Like, what are we doing?
We did a lot.
I just want to say all the stuff that you just talked about. That's the not glamorous thing. I want everybody to realize we don't get paid for any of this if it doesn't close.
Right.
Yeah. So all of the stuff that we've talked about today, we only get paid after it closes. So if somebody decides, you know what, at the last minute, I'm not going to do this, all of the work that we do throughout the entire contract is for free.
Well, and that's a risk versus reward component there. And there is an argument, the compensation, realtor compensation has come into play a lot lately. There's been a lot of conversations. My argument back is, man, there's a risk versus reward. I'm thinking of some clients right now, wonderful people, but I have worked with them for a year and I have sold both of their properties. And neither one came to fruition because of situations out of our control, out of their control and my control. So there's a year's worth of work that I haven't been compensated on, and that's totally fine. That's just part of the game when we end up closing at some point, or if we end up continuing to work together down the road, then at some point, hopefully we will get a closing. But that is the risk versus reward component in this game of real estate. Now, we've talked about the hub, right? Being the hub of the coordination. Aspen went into that quite a bit. Paul talked about contracts and staying up on regulations and adherence and understanding of the contracts, being able to lay out a cohesive landscape for buyer and seller. Shannon's talking about all the back end stuff that we have to do for compliance and for record keeping. And also for those emails that we'll get, inevitably, hey, the septic failed 2 years later, or we're having an issue. Who is the plumber? Oh, let me go back into your file and pull that up and I'll send it to you. So those are all important components, but we have not yet talked about the people component, the actual clients and that we work with, that we love and enjoy working with. We are also their advisors to a large degree, and oftentimes counselors to a large degree. It's a big emotional swing for most people. This is the largest transaction that they do in their lifetime. And so sometimes it can be very stressful. Sometimes you just have to sit back and listen to your client and let them vent and understand that it's okay to vent and it's okay to call Paul and at 7:00 on a Sunday night and say, I'm freaking out here. How do you help me?
You know what brings out the worst in people? And I've experienced this because I coached my daughters in softball. It brings out the absolute worst in you. Like all the things that you wish you didn't do. You're over competitive. You get angry. You want things to go perfect and they don't. And I see that in clients an awful lot. Like they'll bring out all their insecurities, all of the emotions that they have in the house, and all of the fear a lot of times will come out, and we get the brunt of it a lot of the time. But it reminds me that everybody's human. Just got to listen. It'll calm itself down. Say, how about we take a break on this? We'll talk tomorrow. Those types of things. But we always say, if it weren't for people, this job would suck.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an important part, right?
This job sucks because of people.
Yeah.
Too, so.
It's a double-edged sword. No, but it's a wonderful, we're very blessed to be in a position where people like that who are experiencing frustration or anger or fear feel safe coming to you and feel safe calling you and saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like, I don't even know where I'm at right now. My emotional compass is off the chart.
And in an ideal situation, that's what happens. If a customer comes and says that they're feeling overwhelmed, they're not sure if they're making the right decision, at least we have something to work with. I think what's frustrating is when you have people that kind of feel like a caged animal. They've got themselves and they're a little bit overwhelmed. They don't maybe deal with emotions well. And so now you're the bad guy. And that's really hard to have to work with too, because then you have to reassure them, I'm on the same team as you.
Yeah,
I'm doing everything I can. If this doesn't work, let's talk that over, But to some people, it's hard to get them to that place. They everyone's got their own personality.
Yeah. So. Yep. So there is a lot of back end that happens, and we are very much aware of all the things that need to go into a transaction to get it to the closing line. But the people component is often your most rewarding, but also your most difficult component to deal with as well. And this is not certainly a slant on any buyer or seller or clients that we work with. It's just the reality of it, right? Anytime, when I go and purchase a vehicle, I get, I can get fired up pretty quick, or, and I have to call and vent or whatever. And then, the person I work with talks me off the ledge and I'm good. So it's not just in our industry, but I think it's important to peel back the layers of all the things that we do that behind the scenes that people don't see. Wouldn't that be a fair thing to do? I think
it's so funny because I consider myself so even keeled for the big stuff. Any huge purchases, any surgeries, I'm like, it's fine. Everything's fine because here's what we're going to do. And there's like a plan. But if there's like a minor inconvenience or someone's slightly rude, I'm like, like that's more what I get like frustrated about than like the big things. But I think it actually works really good because then whenever we have clients who are very stressed, because it's stressful to buy and sell homes and commercial or what you're starting a new business, whatever it might be, it is stressful. But I'm just like, this is so exciting. Here's what we're going to do and here's the plan. And it should be pretty smooth. I mean, every once in a while there's rough ones, but those are few and far between. Really, they're mainly pretty smooth, Yeah. And I think that it works good with the high stress of the deal, but I like the people aspect of it.
I do too. I love that. And it can be challenging at sometimes, but I do love the people component. It really brings the fulfillingness part to this job, to this profession. I'll never forget a story you shared with me, Shannon, that there was a lady in a bigger city and she was a top producer. And this young couple came and worked with her and they had the most smoothest transaction. and they closed their deal. And after they closed their deal, then they found out how much business that woman, do you remember that story that she does?
Yeah. And they were shocked, and they said, we didn't realize you had any clients other than us. Yeah. And I've always told him that that's how I want us operating. I don't want people to ever feel like they were too busy for me, or, they had so many people they were working with that, I couldn't see houses when I wanted to, or I couldn't, I had to wait 2 days to get a call back. I don't ever want anybody to feel, no matter how busy I am, you're still my priority.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that was an enlightening conversation about peeling back the layers a little bit. And again, not a big woe with me as a realtor, but I think it's important for our clients and for the audience to understand how much goes into each transaction. I wish it were as simple as putting a sign out there, meeting with some clients, going to have lunch by the lake, and then picking a home and closing. But it's not. That's the reality of it. But we love our jobs. We love our clients, and we're very grateful for this career and industry. It's provided a lot of wonderful blessings in all of our lives and for our clients as well. So thank you for that conversation. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, you can go to our Facebook page and sign up there and follow us there. We get all kinds of information that we put out for buyers and sellers. And Shannon throws out those funny memes all the time. I always find myself laughing at those memes. Those are great.
I try to pick the good ones.
You do pick some good ones for sure. But thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning into The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. If you got value from today's episode, hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. Check the show notes with direct links to our buyer and seller video series, your inside track to making smarter moves in real estate. Want to take it further? Visit sjcbroker.com to learn more about the Lyons Group, or schedule a private consultation today. Complex markets demand smart strategies. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, we're here to give you the edge. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.